Hey guys, welcome back. So as promised, this is the first video of 2025. I hope you all had a wonderful Christmas and a really nice New Year. Mine was quite quiet, but I preferred it that way after 4 years working in the pub games. I just wanted a really quiet, peaceful one. But I hope you guys all had a really busy, lively New Year and Christmas. Comment down below. Let me know how yours went. So just want to start off with obviously the thank yous. So thank you for everyone who has been watching for the past few months or the past year or so. Special thank you to the Desolate one. You have been commenting quite recently on quite a few videos, and I really appreciate that. I really appreciate that you're here giving me a chance. So obviously this is the video that you requested. Now originally I wasn't going to do this story so soon, mainly because it's still really fresh in people's minds. And what I tend to find happens is when a story is really fresh, other true crime YouTubers, and this is no disrespect to them, you know, I really appreciate their work and I really enjoy their work as well. What I find with them is when a story like this comes out, they all at the same time are doing stories. And I thought to myself, even though I thought it was an important story to tell, I just thought there's not really much that I can add to it. Whilst everyone is doing the same videos. So I wanted to give it a little while before I did go on to this story, but obviously my viewer, the Desolate one, you requested and I wanted to deliver, so here is your request. If you guys have any other stories that you want me to do, just request them down below. I'll look into them. I've got a few great stories that are coming up. So with all that said and done, all out of the way, we're going to get into tonight's true crime story. So we're going to be discussing the case of Alexander McCartney. So, as always, we go to the beginning. So who was Alexander McCartney? So he was born on the 2nd of April 1998 and he grew up close to a place called Newry, and that is in Northern Ireland. Very remote, desolate area. And what you tend to find within these areas is really not much. You know, a few tiny villages scattered here and there. And it tends that people live there, particularly young people, they're in their teens or children, because there's just literally nothing for them to do. They end up getting into trouble with one way or another. I have really fond memories of living in a very similar place when I was younger, around 10, 11, and some really fond memories of me and my sister bunking off all the time and getting into trouble. I look back on it now and obviously it was bad what we were doing, but it's still a little bit funny. So sorry, let's get back into the story. So he attends Newry High School. He was described as introverted and socially awkward, and he was also described as someone who didn't really tend to make a wonderful lot of effort with other people. He had a small group of friends that he did make an effort with, but outside of that he just didn't gel. And you commonly find that within schools, so you could probably go back with your own memories, and even in adulthood, really. You know, people tend to be more comfortable around people who are like them. If you notice, I mean, there might be the odd one or two that don't, but you know, there's a lot of people that are in their friendship groups. The friends all have the same sort of common interests. They all sort of reflect each other. I'm probably one of the few that doesn't have that sort of friendship group. I don't really have a friendship group if per se. It might surprise you, I don't actually have any gay friends. All my friends are are women, or there's a couple of straight men that I'm friends with. And in regards to my friends who are straight, got nothing generally in common, but they don't care that I do this. I do drag and I do the true crime. I also obviously do my quizzes, but on the same flip of the coin, I have no interest in watching football with them per se. But we get on, we have a laugh, we have a joke, we banter with each other, we rip the shit out of each other. So I'm probably one of the very few, but generally in society, you will find people sort of surround themselves with people who are like them, so they're more comfortable. Um, so he then moves up to college. He starts studying computer science, um, which comes into real help with him later on down the line with what we're going to talk about. Um, his introvert nature, again at college, it was more observed. Now, college obviously tends to give you a little bit more freedom rather than what school did, but he was still described as incredibly introverted. He then goes to study at Ulster University, and this is to gain a degree in computer science. Um, this leads him to begin obtaining multiple devices. Um, he starts flicking through a site called Omegle. So, Omegle is, I think people of a certain age might remember chat roulette. I don't know if that's still a thing, but from what I've seen of Omegle, it kind of reminds you of chat roulette, just not in the adult sort of capacity that chat roulette was. I remember going on chat roulette on a Saturday night once when I was about 21, and immediately the first person I connected with, some guy knocking one out. Whereas from what I've seen of Omegle, it tends to be more of a children's app, but they connect with people with like little chat rooms, and it can be incredibly dangerous because you don't know who you're going to be connecting with, and obviously because it is one that's with children, it tends to attract obviously the predators. We're not going to make any bones about it. They are going to infiltrate any sort of place that they can infiltrate, and this is what he does. He starts connecting on the Omegle. He then writes a message on Omegle, and this message reads, "I'm willing to show you anything you want on Kick for lots of pics of hot teen girls." So this just opens up to what he's attracted to sexually. For those of you who don't know what Kick is, it's another social media app, and it after what is basically like a discreet messaging service, so nothing can be leaked and things like that. It's again really popular within these sort of predatory paedophile groups. If you watch other true crime documentaries, you would have heard about this app being used with paedophiles. Not necessarily saying that everyone on Kick is that, but it was more common because of how secure that app is. Telegram seems to be another really good one for them. So I think obviously we as a collective of sane individuals, we need to look at maybe talking to the companies like Kick and Telegram and getting them to update their policies, in my opinion. Comment down below if you think I'm wrong, but I welcome your criticisms and whatnot. But personally, for me, that was my personal opinion. Now, another log, which was dated on the 16th of March 2014, so this was just before his 16th birthday, and this was on a tablet that he had obtained through college. He downloads a very series of apps, and these apps are ones that are built to keep images safe. They lock them in secure folders, and again, it's another thing that is unable to be filtrated and unable to be leaked. Now, over a 6-year period, he connects with over 3,500 children through Omegle and Snapchat and Kik. And he's using various different names on here to pretend that he himself is a child. And this happened, it wasn't just in the UK, this was worldwide. He was connecting with children in America, South America, in Australia, in New Zealand, Canada. So his domain knew no bounds, really. He would use a fictitious identity, like I said, to gain trust. And this is kind of, obviously, this is what we would call as catfishing. And catfishing is done for a multitude of reasons. It's not necessarily to defraud people. It could literally be someone who's feeling a little bit lonely. They create this whole persona, go online and just tell a few tall tales to someone. Obviously, there are people out there that will plan to meet up with these people, don't turn up. And then you've got the ones like the Tinder swindler who swindles money out of people, convince these people that they're in love with them, and then they go on to a story about financial difficulties and people sending over their life savings, and then automatically they find out they're blocked and their money's gone forever. So it's like everything else, it's a multitude of layers. It's not just one thing, it's not just the other thing, it's all different things that all stacks up. But at the end of the day, it's done for a particular reason, it's done for a multitude of reasons. So like I said, he would contact children on Kik, he would use Instagram, Snapchat, and his particular target seemed to be very young girls who were either questioning their sexuality or had just come out. Because what we're seeing nowadays is a lot of teenagers are coming out as gay, bisexual, transgender, whatever, at younger and younger ages. Because there's more conversations about this. Go back to just 10, 20 years ago. For example, when I was growing up, it wasn't seen as anything positive. It wasn't seen as anything that was acceptable in society. Today, you could argue that there are still some people who feel that way. I get the odd comment every now and then. But overall, there's a lot more freedom for people to discover who they are, and you tend to find that people coming out younger and younger, and this is what he was targeting. He was targeting 12 and 13-year-old girls who discovering their boundaries and discovering that they are attracted to the same sex, the same gender. He would convince the young girls that they themselves were talking to a girl of their own age, and having the same experiences as them. He would use names such as Chloe 131X or Hannah 133X. He would even go as far as assuming the identity of the girl that he had previously abused. And a very, very clever tactic, really dark, manipulative, awful tactic, but very, very clever. Because then it puts his new victim into a state of security. He would use the sexual images that he had previously attained to send over to the new victim. They would fall into that false sense of security, and they think, okay, well, she's okay doing it, so I'm going to do it. So he would obtain sexual images of his new victim. And then if they were seen to be a little bit, still a little bit cautious, he would try various flattering tactics to try and coerce them into sending over these images. Once that image was sent out, he would then screenshot it, and then save it into one of his folders. And he would then go into the notes section of his phone and he would have a prepared statement. He would then copy and paste that statement and put it into the chat. Now, this statement read, I used a fake camera snap app. I have your fake pictures and nudes. You're going to do as I say, and then I will leave. If you don't, I'm going to upload everything online for everyone to see, understand. So he then gives them a period of half an hour to a few hours, and within that time period, they've got to comply to everything he's saying. And he promises them that if they do as they're told, he will leave them alone. They will never hear from him again. He's going to delete their pictures. And they would go along with this because they're panicking. They're feeling like they've got no other choice. Because obviously they don't want these images to go out because these can be seen by anyone. They don't know where they're going. And they're worried, obviously, their parents or their friends at school are going to see these images. And you're probably thinking it would be very unlikely, but first-hand experience of, not of myself, because quite frankly, no one wants to see what goes on under here. But with something that happened in the pub that I was working in, and it's not really the story for here, but let's just say the ramifications were that her children saw those images online the very next day, because of how widespread this whole thing just went. So, after this time frame had ended, Alexander, he's still pestering them for more images and threatening them, and they're feeling like they've got no choice. They have to send over these images. He would force them to engage in online sex with him. He forwarded these images onto other paedophile groups. And he would also force the victims to begin involving their younger siblings. Some of them as young as 3 years old. If they didn't have siblings, but they had, for example, a dog, he would try to force them to involve the dog. On one occasion, he connects with a 12-year-old girl. It's not said where this girl lived and what part of the world she lived in. But he took him less than 10 minutes to coerce this girl into doing these acts. Less than 10 minutes for a 12-year-old girl. Like, this is how good he was at doing this sick, depraved stuff. He's blackmailed and he's coerced her into doing the most degrading, despicable acts that, quite frankly, as an adult, you would want to do, let alone a 12-year-old child. But this is the sick, depraved world of Alexander McCartney, a man that's so pathetic. He, quite frankly, can't get someone his own age because he's vile. So he has to go for the defenseless people, ones that can't defend themselves, to try and act like the big strong man that he wants to be, but he's not. Now, he would convince all the victims to keep their faces in the frame, which is very, very rare for predators like this because they don't want to see their victims in pain or discomfort, but he's convincing them to keep their faces in the frame. In videos that were obtained by the police later on in the search, the victims are heard and they're seen pleading with Alexander to stop. One victim saying to him that she's going to kill herself, um, and that her mother had cancer and her mother was dying. And Alexander replies with, well, I don't give a shit about you or your mother. Like, I'm here for me. And in another video, a 13-year-old girl is telling him that her 11-year-old sister, who he was forcing to take part, the 11-year-old girl was throwing up and really uncomfortable. But eventually she begins to comply, and he exerts his power, telling the 13-year-old he now owns the video of her abusing her sister, and that he's demanded another half an hour extra. And all of this extra content over the next half hour has to include her 11-year-old sister's face. The girl tells him that she's going to go to the police, and he replies, well, I'm secure because I've been doing this for well over a year. And in other instances, he would order the girls to either urinate or defecate on the floor and then handle what their bodily functions. One girl, he tells her to pick up a marker pen and to write on her body that she's his little fuck toy. Again, it's a very common thing that within certain games, but I think we all agree that, you know, prisoners, where he is now, find the biggest marker pen and forcibly eject it down his throat or up his arsehole so it comes out his throat. Either one is preferable. Now, some of the girls would ask why he was doing this to them. He replied that he was just messed up, or that he was into really weird stuff. Now, obviously, absolute bollocks, because yes, there are some people who are into messed up stuff. There are some people that are into weird stuff. Fairies, for example. I know, obviously, in the video that I did a few months ago about Tim Alonso, that I said whatever happens between two people is their business, and yes, it is. But at the end of the day, we can all agree the fairies are fucking weird. But they're consenting adults. Whatever you do between two adults is your business. Don't inflict it on other people that don't want to know. Don't inflict it on animals. Don't inflict it on children. Like, it doesn't need to be said. And yet, here we are, again, talking about this. So he would add on that he would just get really deep, depraved sexual turn on from this stuff. He needed the urge to have full sexual control. He made false allegations against his parents. He said that he was completely home alone because they were in prison for abusing him. And you won't be surprised that these turn out to be lies. Now, what he's saying with that is sometimes the people that have been physically abused, sexually, mentally, whatever, that they go on to abuse, and it does happen. Not in every case. Obviously, there's some people that advocate against it completely. They abhor it. They end up staying single for the rest of their life. But there are cases of some people that have been abused that go on to be the abuser because they feel that it's completely normal. Now, some of the girls eventually spoke up, and in early 2016, Alexander was arrested. So the police turn up at his parents' house. He's in his bedroom. They seize a ton of electronic equipment. So there's 8 computer towers, 4 laptops, 8 tablets, and 9 mobile phones. In investigation for this stuff, through all this electric equipment, they found category A, B, and C images of sexual abuse. So there was 650 category A, 704 category B, and 2,136 category C images. There was also 408 prohibited stills of children. This equal to around 3,490 images and videos altogether. And now, at this original arrest, no victims were blamed. So Alexander was released on bail. So we all know that obviously what tends to happen is when a paedophile is arrested, initially they try and put all the blame on the child, and the child come onto them, and so on and so forth. Because at the end of the day, they're the victim in all this, not the innocent child that they have abused. It's a very common tactic, but it just doesn't wash. It wasn't me, it was the 4-year-old girl. Like, you're a man in your 50s, like, really. So, like I said, he's released on bail. In 2018, he's arrested for the exact same charges, and he's again released. Now, in 2019, Police Scotland received information of a 13-year-old girl that's being abused online within the UK, and they conclude, so obviously bearing in mind the previous arrests had been done by the Northern Irish police, so the Scottish police wouldn't have had any clue what was going on. But they get wind of, I did say the UK, I meant say within Scotland, sorry. So, police in Scotland, they get wind of a 13-year-old girl that's being abused, they get a report of this, and during their initial investigation, they feel that the perpetrator is in Northern Ireland. So, they contact Northern Irish police, they hand over all the details, and Northern Irish police, they put 2 and 2 together, and immediately they think of Alexander, like one of the people that's working on the case. They're like, I worked on something very similar a few years ago. So initially, Alexander, he becomes suspect number 1. They go to his house, and lo and behold, when they raid his room, he's in the middle of abusing his next victim. So he's been caught red-handed. On the device that was in front of him, he had Snapchat open, and they could read the conversation that was on Snapchat. They discover more images, and he's rearrested and remained on remain on remand. Sorry, there's something in my throat and I couldn't get it out. Now, police then call a lady called Catherine Kieran. She was the acting head of Public Prosecution Serious Crime Unit. And Catherine said that girls on average who were between the ages of 10 and 12 were being threatened in the most depraved way. Some of these children had been targeted by Alexander, has spoken out, but others hadn't told anyone up until the point that police knocked on their door. The level of offending, it was described as a full-time job for Alex, because he was spending all manner of time in his room just constantly on his computer and searching for his next victim. Now, in the early investigation, teams they worked around the clock to identify the victims. Obviously, many of the children they were too afraid to speak out, which is very very common. But eventually, most of them did speak out and give statements. The Many of them are only identified due to their faces being in the videos. He had been very meticulous about the content he had amassed, and he had everything put in files with different names, and this kind of just helped the police to track down these victims and give them the justice that they deserved, that they needed. He even went as far as saving the map of where his victim was in the world, because like I said, this was a worldwide operation for him. This wasn't just within the UK. When he appears in court to face the sample charges, prosecution used the online census of victims who hadn't been traced, and they focused on 70 victims. This was most likely to be done to be made more manageable for them, because, like I said, 3,500 children were affected by this. In January 2021, he was expected to plead guilty to his charges, and this racked up to around 200 offences. And the day before the court appearance, the Northern Irish police are made aware of a girl who had taken her own life in 2018 after being blackmailed by Alexander. So this girl, she's the only one that's been named in this whole thing, because understandably, when the victim is still alive, they are given anonymity to protect them, and it just allows them to try and process what's happened to them in the privacy of their own home, and so obviously they don't get recognised on the street as, are you that girl or are you that boy, you know, because some people are genuinely curious and nosy like that, and this way it just affords them the decency to process without that added interrogation. So, like I said, he makes contact with 12-year-old Cimarron Thomas in 2018. Now, Cimarron, she was born in West Virginia in the USA, but she lived, I believe, in Texas. He makes contact with her on the 7th of May 2018 at 4 a.m, which was Northern Irish time. So that would have made it around 11 p.m, I believe, in where she was in the world. He was using the profile name of Sarah131X, and within quick succession, he's coercing Cimarron to send over indecent images of herself. He's asking for her pictures of her topless, but the topless photo had to include her face. And then eventually this proceeds into him requesting and demanding that she digitally penetrates herself. 15 minutes into the chat, he posts his prepared statement, and he keeps her online for the next 2 hours. He's telling her to do really, really disgusting, degrading acts that weren't listed in any sort of document I could see. He's making her pose in sexual positions. What they do say is that in some of the images she was in underwear, in some of the images she was naked. He makes her speak sexual words to him. He makes demands to Cimarron to include her younger sister in the abuse as well. So she had to go wake her sister up and bring her in. He tells her to urinate and defecate. All of this on camera. All of this had to include her face. At the end, he tells Simran that she had done really, really well. She'd done a good job. And that she could now block him. And he would delete all of the images that he had saved of her. However, I won't surprise you that this wasn't true at all. He didn't block her. He didn't delete the images. Within a couple of days, he's back, and he's back in contact with Simran. He's using another profile, and so this was around 12 a.m. Northern Irish time, so around 8 p.m. Where she was. Simran asks him to leave her alone, and he replies, "No, I feel like you made me rush at the end of our last exchange, so this time we're going to take it and do it a little bit different. If you want me to delete the images that I promised I would, then you're going to have to play with me one more time." So eventually she's forced to agree to this, and she's forced to agree to 1 more hour. She's got to send more images of herself. And at one point, Simran tells him that she just basically doesn't like this because obviously she's a child. She's not going to like this. She doesn't understand what's going on, but she knows in her head that this isn't right. She doesn't feel comfortable. She's verbalizing this. She tells him that she's going to call the police. He replies with just IDC, which we know means I don't care. She begins getting distressed. She starts crying. And he just goes on and on and on. And he's telling her to include her brother. And she says, "Well, I don't have a brother." But it's proven that she did take a picture of her 9-year-old sister. So Alexander says that he wanted to see her topless. So he wanted to see the 9-year-old topless, and it had to include her face. And Simran, she's basically pleading with him. She's saying, "No, please, like, not her. I'll do anything, but not her. She's just 9 years old." And he forces her into it. She's continuing to refuse. He then creates a countdown of 30 seconds, or he's going to post all of her pictures. He tells her that he's going to post them to a man called Ben Thomas. Ben was, I don't know how he found this out. It's not specifically said how he found out, but Ben Thomas was Simran's father. So he says that your dad should see the pictures first. So Simran again reiterates that she's going to kill herself. And he replies, "Well, good luck, goodbye. You will see what happens by tonight. I try to be nice, offering you to delete them." And this is when the conversation just stops. This whole exchange was within a half-hour time frame. 3 minutes later, just 3 minutes later, Simran's 9-year-old sister finds Simran lying on the floor of her parents' bedroom. Simran had got hold of her father's gun and shot herself. The 9-year-old, she picks up Simran's phone and she hits the panic button, and that automatically puts her through to 911. Later on, obviously Simran at this point, she is still alive. She's taken to hospital, but she sadly passes away later that night. A year and a half later, so unable to process what had actually happened to Simran, Ben takes that gun and he also commits suicide. In statements from the rest of the family, they said that after Simran had died, he just completely lost interest in life because he felt that he was a failure. He couldn't protect his little girl, so he felt that he had no place left on this earth. Um, Absolutely devastating, but I strongly feel that Alexander should have been charged, with 2 counts of manslaughter or 2 counts of murder because he directly caused the deaths of 2 people. It doesn't matter if it was overseas; he's still completely involved. He was completely his fault that a child died and her own father took their own life. On the flip side, and I don't want to come across as harsh when I say this, I think things like this that have happened is one of the reasons why America needs to look at their policy of guns in a household. Um, I don't want to come across as harsh saying that, but I think many people might agree. I don't know. That's just my personal opinion. If you disagree, just feel free to comment down below. But I think really, yeah, America do need to look at their policy on guns in the household. That's all I'm going to say on the matter. So Simran's mother, Stephanie, she releases a statement saying that, like I said, like Ben had lost complete interest in life, and he just felt like he couldn't go on anymore. And it wasn't until three years later that Simran's family discovered the truth as to why she had taken her own life. In court, Alexander, he pleads guilty to the manslaughter for Simran. So obviously what I was touching on earlier, I was coming up to this is why I said that he should have been done for Ben as well. But obviously he couldn't be. So this made him the first person in the UK to be charged with causing the death of a person who lived in another country. And the US government, they had made plans to actually extradite him to the US to be charged, but it was a bit too late. Like, he'd already been charged in the UK. But obviously, no doubt he would have served a more severe sentence in the US than what he would ever do in the UK. So between January 2021 and March 2024, Alexander pleads guilty to 1 count of manslaughter, 14 counts of inciting a girl under 13 to engage in sexual activity involving penetration, 32 counts of inciting a girl under 13 and under 16 to engage in sexual activity, 9 counts of causing a girl under 13 to engage in sexual activity again, 14 of causing a girl aged between 13 and 16 for the same charges, 58 counts of blackmail, 29 counts of making indecent images, 11 counts of distributing indecent images, 2 counts of causing a person to engage in sexual activity without consent, 12 of processing processing indecent images, 1 count of intimidation, and 1 count of possessing prohibited images of children, and 1 count of sexual communication with a child. On the 25th of October, the sentencing hearing takes place at Belfast Crown Court. This was in front of Judge Mr. Justice O'Hara. Alexander admits to all 185 charges. At the trial, the evidence of the first rape from 2016 was presented. This included a handwritten note which read, "Dear Mum and Dad, I would like to say sorry," and explain that it went on that he had been a victim himself of catfishing, and this was his way of dealing with this process. he goes on to discuss that since the previous September, so September 2015, he wanted to end his life one way or another, um, as she had so he was blaming a woman called Sarah that had catfished him. She had the power to ruin his life. So he's added on that he shouldn't live with the guilt and that he has been depressed ever since. He finishes with saying, "It should have stopped a long time ago. I was stupid and it spiraled out of control and I can't take it anymore. I am so sorry. Goodbye. I love you all." Now, in an interview with police in February 2016, he tells the story of his catfishing to the police. He goes on to name the person as Sarah, and they exchanged pictures, some nude imagery, that eventually she started blackmailing him. He said that he knew the police were aware of an image that was posted to a website, but he'd been made to post it. And this had happened at least 3 times because Sarah had made him. So he's saying that Sarah basically sent him an image that he had to post of someone else on a website, and that they were fully aware of this, and that he was completely under this woman's spell. This whole story turned out to be a complete lie. Sarah never, ever, ever existed. And there was no evidence to back up his claims. So when it comes to the victim impact statements, many of his victims all wrote one. They all were read out in court. And many are told how Alexander had stolen their childhood, how they themselves had attempted suicide. Also written in statements were from parents, all detailing how they felt about him and how his actions had affected their children. In an addendum that was dated October 2024, Alexander, he sticks to his catfishing story, and his own blackmail. But by 17, the choices that he had made were completely his own. And it finished stating that he didn't meet the threshold for psychopathy or any other personality disorder, but they add on that he had been self-medicating from the age of 16 for anxiety and depression with marijuana. Now, self-medicating isn't something that's uncommon. You only have to go through TikTok and you see that people are self-diagnosing themselves with various different things. And most of them, they don't know what they're talking about when it comes to it. And I believe that's probably what he's done. He's, "Oh, my life is shit, I've got no friends," and all that bollocks. So that's making him depressed, because he has to have that sort of thing for people to feel a little bit sorry for him. And if he generally was, then I take it back, but personally I don't think he was. And it's the same as the people that are on TikTok saying that they've got DID and whatever, and they start introducing their supposed other personalities. But anyone who suffers from DID knows that that's not how it works. As for the marijuana thing, I don't know why that was really brought up, because many people smoke it for a variety of reasons, and that should never be brought up in a case. People have their vices and how to process things, and some people, yes, they smoke marijuana because they are feeling a little bit low, and it's like a form of escapism. It shouldn't really be brought up, but it was. It's the same as bringing up mental illnesses in courts. I don't think they should play a factor because these are not the ingredients. These are not the things that make someone do what Alexander has done. Um, so you just got to put that down to the way he's wired. It's simply black and white, I'm afraid. And as far as I'm concerned. So the prosecution argued that there was no evidence to back up Alexander's claims of the catfishing, and this was after analysing all of his devices. When it comes to the verdict, Alexander was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 20 years to serve. So this means that he could be set free in 2039. So what they do is they take into consideration how long he spent on remand. So at this point, he spent, I think it was around 3 or 4 years, maybe on remand. So obviously they look at that while sentencing. So that's why I say that he could be free by 2039. So they look at the time that he was first put on remand. The judge also put a ban on Alexander being able to work with children in future. Not that needed to be added at all, because any sane person is just going to look at him in the future and be like, oh, you were charged with that. That's where you went to prison. Big red X immediately. So he doesn't need that sort of ban. It should just be said verbally, in my opinion. But I could be wrong. Please feel free to let me know if you think I'm wrong. He states that Alexander was remorseless and that he ignored multiple opportunities to stop. He ignored multiple pleas from the victims, and that he had a plan that worked for him and him alone, and that's the plan that he stuck to. And this was all for his own deviant sexual pleasure. The judge concluded that it is difficult to think of a sexual deviant who poses a greater risk than Alexander McCartney. Detective Chief Superintendent Eamon Coram said that my team and I welcome today's sentencing. Alexander McCartney is nothing but a disgusting child predator who was posing as young girls to groom and manipulate and sexually abuse. And some of these victims were as young as 3 to 4 years old. As far as I'm concerned, there is only one place for McCartney, and that is behind bars. And I am glad that his offending has been uncovered and it has been taken seriously by our criminal justice system. Simran's grandparents, they released a statement, and that read out that we have been devastated by our granddaughter's passing. We know nothing. We know nothing or of what we do or say will ever bring her back. But if we can help another family not to go through this heartbreak, we would have done something good, and something good would have come out of her death. Parents, please keep the doors of communication concerning the evil of some people completely open. Another parent also spoke out. So this man was the parent of 2 girls who lived in New Zealand, and they were 12 and 10 years old. They were contacted by McCartney in December of 2017. He said that as parents, you do your best to shield and protect your children from the monsters of the world, only to find a little bit too late that the dangers of the internet are all too real, that you weren't as vigilant enough. He said that having both of our daughters involved was gut-wrenching. Within the 4 walls of our home, they should have been safe, and he manipulated and preyed on their innocence for his own sick enjoyment. We hope the publicity around this case helps others come forward, no matter how difficult it is to flush out these predators and to protect those at risk. and those already being abused. Now, following on from this case, and in my opinion, it's a little too late, but Snapchat, they announced that they have made changes in regards of how people connect with young people who use the app. And for anyone who has concerns, if their child is in touch with a potential predator, that they can use the family centre that can be found within the settings of the app. But like I said, for me, this is a little too late. Because how many times have we heard the story of predators being able to access children who are drawn to these apps for multiple reasons? They can connect within seconds. All too easy. I think what Snapchat need to do is upload a policy where so the same as what YouTube do. So obviously you notice that I put my videos as an age restriction. And that basically means that you need to pop in your card details to unlock that age restriction. It probably wouldn't work. You know, obviously you'll say, oh, well, you know, the children are just going to go steal their parents' credit card and put it online. But I think what would help is if Snapchat had that kind of feature where you had to have a card detail to verify your age, or any other sort of detail to verify your age. So, you know, you could only use it if you were 16, 18, and if you were 12 years old, 13 years old, then you couldn't use it at all. I know obviously there's ways and means of people infiltrating this, but usually 9 times out of 10 they do work. So, for me personally, like I said, these changes that Snapchat made are just too little too late. And I've said that from day one with Snapchat in regards to Snapchat. And it's one of the biggest reasons that I do not use the app. I have no respect for the app for that reason. So, as always, just a huge thank you to everyone who has come forward. I know it's a long one, I know it's shocking, but and like I said, obviously I wasn't going to do this because I feel like I couldn't add anything new to this. If you've made it this far and you feel like you know this case, if you feel like I've missed anything out, please feel free to comment down below. If you feel like I've spoken about something that you wasn't aware of, also feel free to comment. Let me know either way. Like and share this video, get the algorithm out there, and I appreciate each and every one of you. So like I said, obviously this is for the Desolate One. You requested this case, and any of you others want to request a case, then let me know and I will get that done for you. So I appreciate each and every one of you, and I will see you very soon for the next true crime story with Silhouette. Take care, guys, and stay safe.